He had two families for 16 years. She found out at his funeral. I was in the middle of the eulogy when I saw her. She was standing in the back of the room, a woman I'd never seen, maybe 45, wearing a black dress and crying in a way that wasn't polite funeral crying. It was the kind of crying you can't manage. On either side of her were two teenagers, a boy and a girl, looking at the floor the way you do when your whole world has just ended. I kept reading from my notes. I finished the eulogy. I sat down, but I couldn't stop looking at them, because the boy, maybe 16, had my father's jaw, my father's hands, my father's way of standing with his weight on his left foot. And when I looked at him, I knew. My father's name was Thomas. He died of a heart attack on a Thursday morning in March. 62 years old. Too young. Too sudden. I was standing in his kitchen at 7 in the morning trying to reach relatives while the ambulance lights were still in the driveway. My mother had passed 3 years earlier. For 6 years, it had been just the two of us. I was 31. I was his executor. I was the one who called his office, ordered the flowers, wrote the obituary, chose the casket, organized the reception. I was the one who gave the eulogy. My father was, I thought I knew who he was. Careful, reliable, a man who kept his receipts, paid his taxes on time, remembered every birthday, and showed up for every graduation. He called every Sunday evening at 6:30. I could set a clock by it. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that another family was setting their clock by him too. There were things I explained away, one by one, for years. The work phone. My father always had a second phone, a flip phone he kept in his jacket pocket. He said it was for clients who needed a direct line. He was in commercial real estate. Clients called it odd hours. It made sense. I never questioned it. The third weekends. Every third weekend of the month, my father had a regional conference. He'd done it as long as I could remember, even after my mother died. I assumed it was an industry thing. He always came back Sunday night with a small gift, a candle or a book, something he said he'd grabbed at the airport. The will. 8 months before he died, my father mentioned he'd had his estate documents reviewed. Just tidying up paperwork, he said. He'd made me executor years ago. Nothing had changed there. He was casual about it. I was busy. I didn't ask to see the new version. And once, maybe 4 years ago, I found a child's drawing in his glove compartment when I was looking for his registration. A crayon house with a sun in the corner, signed Lily, in large, uneven letters. He laughed when I held it up. "A colleague's kid," he said. "She gives everyone drawings. She's sweet." He took it from me and tucked it into his jacket. I believed him. After the service, the woman approached me. Her name was Sandra. She was composed the way people are composed when they're holding something enormous together by sheer force of will. She told me she was so sorry for my loss. She said Thomas had spoken about me. She told me, and I remember watching her mouth form the words from very far away, that the two teenagers with her were Marcus and Lily, and that Thomas was their father. She said it like she was delivering information I already had. She didn't know I didn't know. I don't remember exactly what I said. I remember excusing myself and going into the bathroom at the back of the funeral home and sitting on the edge of the sink, staring at the wall. Then I went back out, and I was a person who could talk to guests and make sure the sandwiches were replenished, because I was the executor. There was still a job to do. I didn't fall apart that day. I fell apart 3 weeks later in a parking lot, dropping off a box of my father's clothes at a donation center. In the pocket of his overcoat, I found a school photo. Marcus and Lily, maybe 12 and 10. My father's handwriting on the back, "My kids, fall 2020. My kids." I had always thought I was his kid. Singular. As executor, I had access to everything. I wasn't going looking for it, but I found it because his financial records were my responsibility, and his financial records told a story. A second mortgage, 40 miles away, 16 years of payments. A P.O. box registered under Thomas and Sandra. She had taken his last name, which he had apparently not discouraged. Tuition payments to a private school, 2 students, consistent from 2012 onward. A phone plan for 4 lines, mine, his personal phone, the work phone, and a 4th number I'd never seen before. 16 years. Marcus was 16. Lily was 14. He had been doing this since before my mother got sick. He was doing this while I sat with her through chemo. He was doing this at every Sunday 6:30 phone call, every 3rd weekend, every birthday he remembered. He had 2 families, and he had kept them from each other for 16 years. As executor, I had the new will, the one he'd tidied up 8 months before he died. It split his estate evenly, half to me, half to my family, at the address 40 miles away. I also had his medical records. My father had been diagnosed with early cardiac issues 14 months before his death and placed on a medication known to cause cognitive changes in some patients. His cardiologist had noted, I'm reading this exactly, some confusion and impaired judgment during follow-up. That note was dated 9 months before his death, 1 month before the new will was signed. The attorney who drafted the new will was from a small practice I'd never heard of. In Sandra's town. 4 years in practice. Referred to my father, according to her own intake notes, by a longtime client, Sandra. I called my own attorney and asked one question. On what grounds can a will be contested? She said, capacity and undue influence. I didn't call Sandra. I didn't confront anyone. I pulled every record I had legal access to and built a folder. I was my father's daughter in at least this way. I kept receipts. The probate case took 8 months. The judge reviewed my father's medical timeline. He reviewed the fact that the drafting attorney had been introduced to my father by the primary beneficiary of that will, a relationship the attorney had failed to disclose. He reviewed the cognitive assessment from my father's cardiologist, dated 1 month before the will was signed. He invalidated the new will. The original will stood. The house, the savings, the investments. To me. Sandra had been living in a house with my father's name on the mortgage. With no valid claim to the estate, she had to find her own path forward. I don't say that with satisfaction. I say it because it's what happened. There was also a life insurance policy, an old one, taken out decades ago, naming me as sole beneficiary. Sandra hadn't known about it. I'm not sure my father had remembered to update it or had simply never gotten around to it. I deposited that check on a Tuesday afternoon and sat in my car for a long time. Marcus and Lily didn't choose any of this. They lost their father too. They grew up believing they had one, fully, completely, which was a lie, but it was also the only truth they'd ever known. 6 months after probate closed, I set up college funds in both their names. Anonymous. I don't know if they'll ever find out who funded them. I don't need them to. I don't know if I'll ever fully grieve my father, the man I thought he was. Because I'm not sure that man ever entirely existed. But I know this. I showed up. For my mother through every hard year, for the estate when it mattered, for the truth when it would have been easier to look away, and in the end, quietly, for 2 kids who deserved better than what they got. Some legacies you inherit. Some you have to build yourself. If this story hits somewhere real, subscribe. We share stories like this every week. And if you've ever discovered that someone you completely trusted was living a life you never knew about, tell us in the comments. You are not alone in carrying that.